I am so excited about this partnership that we have. Isabella Bank is definitely a community leader here in Central Michigan. It takes resources to do purposeful things, and they know that, and they're here as a sponsor today of this luncheon and our keynote speaker. And to introduce our keynote today is Jerome Schwinn, the President and COO of Isabella Bank.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. You know, Tom mentions about Isabella Bank's support in the community. Now let's talk about community support for just a moment. It's pretty neat to be, the president of the bank, and when we commit resources to the community and our time and energy and resources, that it's kind of neat. People come up, Jerome, thank you. Hey, the bank's, that's nice. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. Let me just say it is our pleasure. But community support is a two-way street. We've been around Isabella Bank. It's been around for 114 years because of community support, the support we get from the community, the support we get from you. So this is my opportunity to say thank you. So thank you to our community for 114 years of support. Now with that, it's my honor to introduce the speaker today. Charlie Batch began his NFL career with the Detroit Lions, leading the team as quarterback for 4 years. He went on to complete 15 seasons in the NFL, including 2 Super Bowl wins with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Off the field, he took on leadership roles within the NFL, serving as a player rep and executive committee member for the NFLPA, speaking out for players' rights and working for change to benefit the entire league. Today, Charlie is a media personality, entrepreneur, and founder of the Best of the Batch Foundation. We're so excited to have him here with us. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Charlie Batch.
Thank you. How's everyone? Good, let me. Great. But it's always good to be back in Michigan. Having the opportunity to really come back up here, having been spent a lot of time up this way. And I'll get a chance to reflect on that throughout my talk. But I just want to take a moment just for you to think about it for a minute. Think about a moment if someone was to tell you that greatness doesn't live here. Greatness doesn't live here. Better yet, greatness doesn't come from here. Just imagine somebody telling you that when they're talking about your life, your business. Heck, maybe they're talking about the neighborhood you came from. Better yet, somebody telling you that your dream is over before it's even begun. Just imagine if you told them you were going to be a football player at the age of 7. Do you believe that lie, or do you challenge that lie? Here's the one thing about dreams. Dreams are nothing more than plans awaiting action, and sometimes you may be the only person that can see your vision. I'm sure at some point that you were told that you weren't smart enough, that you weren't talented enough. Heck, maybe you didn't come from the right neighborhood, right? And at that point, you have opportunity to decide whether or not you believe that lie or you can challenge it. But here's the one thing about me. I believe that greatness is in here and in here. How many people in here know what this little thing is right here? I'm not trying to trick you. Isn't that April Fool's? It's a challenge flag, right? It's a challenge flag. NFL head coaches have this in their sock. Some people have it in their back pocket. And they throw it during the course of a game because they believe that call may have a direct outcome of the football game. Some of you all might be at home like, throw the challenge flag every time. But NFL head coaches have 2. And if they win both of those challenges, they get a 3rd. But that's something that they'll keep in their pocket every single time just because they have it, because at that point, they may be able to challenge this. Back in Pittsburgh, we always yell at Mike Tomlin to do the exact same thing, like throw the flag, throw the flag. But it's not right. But I'm going to take you back. I'm going to circle back a little bit about me growing up. Growing up in Homestead, Pennsylvania, is literally 10 minutes east of Pittsburgh. So when I was growing up, all I wanted to do was play football. And at that point, I told him I want to obviously graduate high school because that's not even an option in my household, just like I'm sure it's not an option for you all as well. But I think for me, as I was growing up, I told them I want to go play football. And they're like, well, where are you going to go play football at? I said, well, I'm going to Eastern Michigan. And they're like, you're planning on going to the pros, going to Eastern Michigan? Like, how do you think that's going to happen? Better yet, where's Eastern Michigan at? I said, this is in Ypsilanti. And they're like, Ipsy who? So they had no idea how to spell it. And you all know how to spell it here. But back in Pittsburgh, I'm like, it's Ypsilanti. Ha, take that. And they're kind of looking at me like, how are you going to go pro? Eastern Michigan is in the Mid-American Conference. How many people have come out of Eastern Michigan that went pro? What are you trying to do? So coming from Steel Valley High School, I'm like, I'm going to Eastern Michigan. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go, number one, go to college. And at that point, I'm coming up here. I get to Eastern Michigan and things weren't necessarily going my way. I get there freshman year and I remember coming back in and we had a tough loss that day. That next Monday morning, I come in and I'm arguing with the coach. But I have to tell you who we lost to. We had a tough loss to, and I know Dr. Ross is here from Central Michigan, so we lost to Central Michigan that day. So I'm literally like, I'm arguing with the coach. And the coach is listening, he's looking at me, and I said, Coach, I said, we're not winning because you're not playing me. And he's kind of looking at me like, what are you talking about? I said, we're not winning because you're not playing me. He said, Charlie, what are you doing? He said, listen to you. He said, look at your attitude. I said, my attitude? You're not playing me. He said, Charlie, won't you just shut up and listen for a minute? He said, Charlie, it's not your ability. It's your attitude. I said, my attitude? You're the one not playing me. He said, look at you. Like, this is crazy. Look at me. I can't even have a conversation with you. And at that point, things started to kind of reflect. And he started reflecting back. And he said, Charlie, we need to put up some principles. And the first principle was being ready. Being ready. I said, what is that? He says, the high standard. It means putting in the work and doing daily what ordinary people do occasionally. Putting in the work and doing daily what ordinary people do occasionally. As things started to unfold, yes, I got into the pros. And at that point, I remember, and I'm not sure how many people in here are Steeler fans, but in 2010, we were going through a dilemma because Ben Roethlisberger was suspended for 4 to 6 weeks. People remember that? Hope you do. So we were going through that. And at that point, we get to training camp. And Mike Tomlin saying, Charlie, I'm going to get you some reps. We're going to play. We're going to get ready. We're going to prepare, and we're going to do everything that we need to do to get ready for these 4 games that Ben might be out. So we get to training camp up in Latrobe, Michigan. So as we get there, we go through the first couple days of practice. I don't receive any reps. And when I say reps, that means practice plays to practice during the course of that particular practice. I get 0. So after the first week goes by, I get none. The next week goes by, I receive 0. So I'm standing there and I'm like, Coach, I thought you told me that you're going to get me ready. So I figured if he's not going to practice me, I said, I'm going to put on some suntan lotion and get ready. At least I'm going to work on my tan while I'm standing out here in practice. So I started doing this, and all of a sudden, first preseason game comes, I don't play a snap. The second preseason, I don't play a snap. The third preseason game, I don't even get in. So now the fourth preseason game, my wife's sitting there saying, I said, babe, you going to come to the game? She's like, for what? I'm not going to sit out there for 3.5 hours, and you're not playing. This is crazy. So she decides to go to a luncheon. Or at that point, it was like an afternoon type of deal. The game was 4 o'clock that day. So I get there, and all of a sudden, there was cameras. And you know how before game, they show the players in the locker room. They show them walking through the tunnel. And all of a sudden, here I am in the fourth preseason game. There's a cameraman that follows me all the way through the tunnel. So he's backing up. And after this long walk, I'm getting ready to go into the locker room. And I look at him, and I say, cameraman, I say, why are you following me? He says, this may be the last game that you ever play. And I'm ready to kick the cameraman. Like, what are you doing? So I get there, and after this, I'm realizing, like, man, the way that the cuts are going, I may not necessarily last, and maybe this cameraman is right. So I get there, and after 3.5 quarters, the backup quarterback blows out his knee. So now here we are at the end of the game. So my wife's phone's blowing up because now she's texting me. She's like, what happened during the game? I said, if you were here, you would know. So at this point, now I stand in this room, and now the media is standing here because now I went from the fourth quarterback on the roster to now potentially starting in the opening week against the Atlanta Falcons in week number 1. That's how things change. So as I'm standing here, the cameraman's looking at me, and he's like, what do you have to say? I said, well, you have to say, because 3 hours ago, you told me I was getting cut. So we end up going into this team meeting. And as we go into this team meeting, Mike Tomlin is standing in front of it. The quarterback's always sit in the front row. So all of a sudden, I walk in with a suit like this because I'm like, this is my time. I'm getting ready. All of a sudden, Coach Tomlin comes in. He says, listen, guys, on the room, I want to address the elephant in the room. I'm sure everybody wants to know who the starter is going to be, and I don't want you walking out of this room not understanding who's going to be the starter preparing for the Falcons. So I sit up in my room. I'm like, this is it. He clicks on. He says, I'm going with Dennis Dixon. You can hear the whole room go, So they wanted to know what my reaction was going to be. And at this point, I had a decision to make. Do I get upset? Or do I help Dennis Dixon the same way that I would help Ben Roethlisberger? In the same way I've been doing throughout the course of his year, what am I going to do? So at that point, I'm upset. We go through that game. I'm still helping him out. So now we get ready to play the Tennessee Titans in week number 2. We beat the Falcons, so we're 1-0. Week number 2, we play the Tennessee Titans. We go down there. We get the kickoff. And there's a young guy standing back there ready to return this kickoff. He runs the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. I'm like, this is going to be great. And I think you may have heard of this guy. He was young. I think his name was Antonio Brown. You may have heard of that guy. He runs the kickoff back. So here we are at the end of the first quarter. The punt is getting ready to happen. So all of a sudden, my right to left, your left to right, the punt is in the air, and the ball's up in the air, and all of a sudden I hear a tap on my shoulder. There's a tap on my shoulder, and I'm like, what do you want? Like, Antonio's getting ready to be the first rookie to ever return a kickoff and a punt return in a game. I have to witness this. So the ball's in the air. As it's getting ready to come down, another tap on my shoulder. I look over. It's Dennis Dixon. Dennis Dixon says, Chuck, as the ball comes down, he said, Chuck, I hurt my knee. I can't play. The ball's coming down, and Antonio getting ready to catch it. I said, you sure picked a fine time to tell me this shit. So I grab my helmet. I go into the game. Now I'm the only quarterback on the roster. This is the second quarter starting. I'm literally running to the sideline, getting the play because they haven't had time to put my battery in to help the helmet, the quarterback to coach communicator, because they didn't even realize I was going into the game. And Mike Tomlin's looking around like, what's Charlie doing in the game? I said, I don't know. Go ask Dennis. So we end up going and we win that game. The next week, we play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I throw 3 touchdowns. So we're now 3-0. We play the Baltimore Ravens in week number 4. We are 1 minute and 15 seconds away from going 4-0. And people are like, what do you mean 1 minute and 15 seconds? 1 minute and 15 seconds because we couldn't count to 3. 3. I step in the huddle. I say, I write 34 dive on 3. Blue 18, said hut. We jump off sides. We lose 5 yards. We had to punt the ball. They go down and score. We lose the game. So we went 3-1 during that time. But the point is being ready. If I didn't accept the responsibility, if I wasn't ready, if I used the excuses that I didn't get practice time to be ready to go to the game, I wouldn't have been ready for that opportunity. We went 3-1. Ben Roethlisberger came back, and we eventually went to Super Bowl 45, which people in Pittsburgh tend to forget because we lost that Super Bowl. We lost to the Green Bay Packers that year. Tough to get there, but that's the first principle of being ready. But number 2 is being resilient. Being resilient is the ability to adapt to change your misfortune. The ability to adapt to change your misfortune. Think about that. I'm sure at some point in your personal life, maybe you're thinking about that. Maybe something happened at work that you just couldn't control, but you're faced with this decision. But I'll take you back just a few years ago. 21 years ago, I was at Eastern Michigan, and I was in my room. We were actually in the apartments, and my roommate, the telephone rings, and my roommate picks up the phone. He says, Charlie, your mom's on the phone. You might want to see her. And then people who know my family know that we are very close. And at this point, I remember picking up the phone, and I said, Mom, what's up? And there was dead silence on the phone. I said, Mom, what's going on? She said, Charlie, you need to come home. I said, what do you mean I need to come home? So I'm packing a bag, and I'm packing a bag full of nothing because I had no idea what I was coming home for. So I said, Mom, before I get on the road and drive 5 hours away from home, about 5 hours home, I said, you need to tell me why I'm coming home. And let me take you back to 1996. 1996, you didn't have cell phones like you do today. You had these little thing called a beeper, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Don't act like you don't know. Little beeper on there. That device shows up the number. Now, I know Zach, I know you don't know about that. Zach is 12 years old, so he has no idea what a beeper is. So in 1990, so at that point, I said, Mom, tell me why I'm coming home. I said, because I can't afford to be in between Toledo and Cleveland and have to call you when you beat me. She says, Charlie, with the deepest swallow that I've ever heard in my life, she said, Charlie, your sister's been shot and killed. I'm like, what? So I get on the road, and I'm flying down the Ohio Turnpike. I get pulled over outside of Youngstown, and the police officer stopped me, and he said, Charlie, what are you doing, Mr. Batch? He says, I told him the story, and he couldn't verify it. He said, Mr. Batch, you've never seen me continue on with your journey. So I get into Pennsylvania. I get to my exit off of the Parkway. I get off, and during that time, it was during the steel mills has shut down, so our town was really under Act 47. So I get across this bridge, and it's pitch dark. Lights are out. I get across the end of the bridge. It's 8th Avenue. I go up the hill 3.5 blocks. I make a left on a road that I'll never forget. It's called East Laurel Way. So I get there, and I see yellow tape, so I knew something happened. So I get out the car, and I start walking around. And I look, and I get to a spot, and there's blood. So now this is surreal. I live 3 blocks away from this. So I go home. I literally get home, and all my friends, they're waiting for me. They say, Charlie, we know who did this. Let's go get them. I said, I need to know what happened. I need to know what happened. So after 48 hours, I'm trying to gather all of the information that I can. And if you've ever been in this situation, it's tough because the codes of the street don't talk. So the information that I finally received, the story basically goes like this. My sister was walking down the street from a friend's house. She got caught in crossfire between rival gangs, and the guy that she was with used her as a body shield. Danielle was 17 years old. She never had an opportunity to live life. And at that point, I said, if I was ever in position to give back, I would. But here I am faced with my friend standing, and all I can remember was a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. And there was a quote that says, not where you stand during comfort and convenience, but it's how you stand during challenge and controversy. This was the most pivotal point in my life because I had a family at home that needed me to be there. But I also had a family up at Eastern Michigan that needed me to be there as well to lead them. And at that point, of course, I wanted to retaliate. But if I retaliated, you would have no idea who Charlie Batch was. But my plans were not to live in a jail cell for the rest of my life. And at that point, I went back up to Ypsilanti. So when I got there, I put all my time and energy to do something in my family that has never been done. And that was to graduate college. Ended up doing that in 1997. Second was hopefully one of those 32 teams would know who Charlie Batch was. And in 1998, I was drafted by the Detroit Lions in the 2nd round. That was one of the highest points in my life, but also remembering what happened to me. And at the end of that year, the beginning of January 1999, I started a foundation, which is called Best of the Batch Foundation. We did some one-off programs in Detroit. And whenever I got to Pittsburgh in 2001, after the 2001 season, 2002, got to Pittsburgh and said, I need to do something. So we started a basketball program just to tire the kids out and so they can go home and go to sleep. That was the entire vision of what this was going to look like. We had 125 kids and 25 volunteers. Now my time in Pittsburgh was 1 year, 2 years, eventually 11 years. The program continued to grow from 125 kids to 365 kids in this one particular program. We were over 100 volunteers. Just imagine taking one community and bringing them into another. This community coming into another. And in 15 years, we just finished our 16th year. And in 16 years, I've only had one fight. One fight. And that was two little girls fighting over a little boy that they claimed that they were going with. So I'm like, if that's the worst that can happen, you want to know what? I will take that all day. But here we are now, keeping the focus. And the Best of the Batch Foundation is an educational foundation, which we focus mainly on reading and computer literacy. So what we do is use the draw for basketball to say, you want to play basketball? Great. There it is. But in the meantime, you need to read a book and attend 3 mandatory study halls. They're like, I don't want to do that. Great. You don't want to play basketball then. That's our way of tricking the mind. Tricking the mind with these kids. That's the only reason, that's the way that I knew how to do it, because if I said, you want to know what? Meet me at the library. We're going to read a book in the summer. I'd be lucky to get 25 kids, right? So it was just a way of tricking the mind. So with that everything that happened, it was a way for us to continue to turn this. And now here we are, 17 years later. We service 3,800 kids. We have over 600 volunteers. And just last year alone, the volunteers in our foundation volunteered their time over 18,000 hours. That was equivalent to over $350,000 to our organization. I'm humbled because because people believe in what we're doing. We have 13 different programs that we run throughout the foundation, but without the help of the volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do any of the things that we are able to do now. And I will share some more of that as we move forward. But the next point, and the final point, is being a pro. Being a pro. Accepting responsibility even when you know things totally aren't your fault. Accepting responsibility even when you know things totally aren't your fault. Think about that for a minute. But then think about it 15 years ago if you're a Detroit Lions fan. I say that because I exit out and people said Charlie Batch wasn't smart enough. Charlie Batch wasn't good enough. Better yet, Charlie Batch wasn't talented enough. Now, I could have listened to that and said, you want to know what? Yeah, maybe it's time to hang them on up. But I didn't. 11 seasons later with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I still was able to play. And here I was in my 15th year in 2012. Ben Roethlisberger gets hurt. We go to Cleveland and we're getting ready to play the Browns. And in Pittsburgh, that's the rival. You cannot lose to the Cleveland Browns. So we get ready to go to Cleveland. I'm the starter for this game. And all of a sudden we get to Cleveland. We're up 7-0. I'm thinking this game is it. We go to Cleveland, 1 turnover, 2 turnover, 5 turnovers. We had 8 turnovers in a football game. 8. I threw 3 interceptions, but we had 8 turnovers in that game. So here we are at the end of this game, and the media is standing out here, and the media is saying, man, Charlie, what do you do? I mean, you led the team to an 8 turnover performance. You can't do it anymore. So I'm standing there with the media. I know millions of people are watching me, and I'm standing up there saying, yeah, you're right, I can't lead the team to an 8 turnover performance. Now, what I really wanted to say when I stood up there was to say, listen, I turned the ball over 3 times. The other fools turned it over 5. You need to go ask them. But I couldn't. I had to accept the responsibility. But in Cleveland, as we go to Cleveland, Mike Tomlin, the head coach, always allows you to drive home with your family. So you drive home with your family. So I get in the car with my wife, and we're driving down the Ohio Turnpike. You're talking about an hour and a half full of silence. So we finally get into the driveway and ask my wife, I said, everything okay? No. That performance that you had was garbage. Don't bring that into the house. She slams the door and walks in the house. So I get out the car and I'm confused because I'm like, she didn't say anything to me, but then she yells at me. So I get out. But in my home, we have an unwritten rule. My wife says, you're only allowed 30 minutes of Sports Center a day. And I said, well, why 30 minutes of Sports Center, babe? She said, because that's your job. I don't want you to come home and talk football. That's dumb. No, we're going to talk about life situation. But in this particular case, babe, she says, honey, you can watch as much Sports Center as you want. I said, well, why would I want to watch Sports Center? She said, because they're going to tell you how bad and how old you are. So I'm mad. So now I'm mad at her. But I can't be mad at her for basically telling me the truth. But I'm mad because of the way she said it. I said, you could have been a little bit more compassionate. She's just laughing. So we walk in. So now for 48 hours, I'm getting crucified on the TV. Charlie can't do it anymore. You're old. You just can't get it done. So now Ben Roethlisberger is trying to come back because it is Baltimore week. We're getting ready to go into Baltimore to play a game. And this is a game where in Baltimore, they won 15 straight games at home in Baltimore. Better yet, the Steelers have never beaten the Ravens without Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. But here I was trying to get that opportunity. But on Wednesday, Mike Tomlin says, Ben, practice. So Ben's practicing Wednesday, Thursday, on Friday. All of a sudden, they're having a conversation and they're whispering. And I'm getting ready to walk into this door. So I'm going back into the meeting or team room, and the coach says, Chuck, he says, you're up. I said, Coach, what do you mean I'm up? Like, you don't realize how bad I played? You don't think I need to practice? He said, get it done. So we get ready to go. So now we're preparing for Baltimore. We're driving into Baltimore. We're going into M&T Stadium, and I'm feeling down. I'm literally feeling down. So I'm like, who can I call? I'm going to call Mom. So I'm like, Mom, we're on the bus, everybody jamming. Mom, I'm feeling a little down. Give me some words of encouragement. She says, babe, she said, it's been a pleasure to watch you play in the NFL for 15 years. She said, better yet, I've been watching you for 31 years playing football. But she says, as you go into Baltimore today, there's no way in hell you're going to win this game, and hung up. So now I'm mad. Like, I'm steaming. I threw my phone against the window. Players are looking at me, and they're like, oh, my gosh, Charlie is ready to play this game. He's so fired up. And I'm like, no, I'm mad because my mom doubted me. So we get into this game, and the game is going back and forth. The game is going back and forth. And I remember getting into the huddle. There's 6 minutes and 51 seconds left in this game. We're at the minus 13-yard line. I'm stepping into the huddle. And all the players are like, yeah, let's go. Let's put some points on the board. And I'm just kind of looking around. And I look up, and the players are like, Chuck, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, man, there's 2 Steeler fans behind the uprights, man. That's pretty cool. Now, try to get your butt back to the huddle. Let's play the game. So all of a sudden, we get there, and on third down, I remember getting this snap, and it's 3rd and 10. So I grabbed the snap. Mike Wallace is at 7 yards right now. Halati Nada, who played with the Lions, who just went on injured reserve, breaks through the line. And he breaks through the line. I'm holding on to this ball. I hear him breathing down my neck. I'm like, Mike, I need you. He's at 8 yards. I throw this ball. And all of a sudden, Halati hits me, and I'm posterized in the air. 360 pounds of this man has just landed on me. And it goes, poof. But there's dead silence like this. When there's dead silence like this, that means you did something right on the road. 70,000 people silence. So I knew something happened that was good for us. So all of a sudden, there was a pass to the left, a pass to the right, and the final pass in my National Football League career goes to Mike Wallace. I passed a 12-yard gain. They attach a personal foul penalty to it. We move 15 yards, and we get in the field goal range. So I'm sitting there watching the clock, and it's 10 seconds, 9 seconds. So I look at Mike Tomlin. I'm like, do I need to call the timeout, or do you need to call the timeout? Coach, you know they talk about your clock management skills. Do you need me to call the timeout? So it's 5, 4. All of a sudden, he calls the timeout with 3 seconds left. So we get to the sideline, and all of a sudden, we're standing on the sidelines. And we get to the point, and all of a sudden, I'm looking around. I'm like, I can't watch this. All the other players are like, I can't watch this. I can't watch this. And I turn around, and I said, I didn't came too daggone far to miss my moment. I turn around, and all I remember is a snap, a hold, and a kick. And all I remember is those 2 Steeler fans that were behind the upright going like this. I just gave you the audio of it, but I want you to check out the video.
At 6 and 5, Pittsburgh headed to Baltimore with a patchwork offense, but a steel resolve.
Bouncing it out to the left is Flair. Touchdown, Pittsburgh! Jonathan Flair picks up his first touchdown rushing of the season.
The Ravens had won 15 straight at home, but the Steelers overcame long odds and a 10-point deficit.
And that is a catch by Heath Miller, reaches for the pylon. And they call it a touchdown.
One more time and win it. Chuck, one more time. It's all here right now. It's all here right now.
The Steelers had never beaten the Ravens with Roethlisberger sidelined. But with the score tied at 20, the 37-year-old Batch was 5 for 5 on a drive that set up the winning field goal.
And the Steelers can now let the clock wind down and bring on Sean Sweezum. Sean Sweezum, he's 23 of 24.
Man, snap it, hold it, and protect it. I ain't worried about 6.
The snap is down. Sweezum's kick is on its way. That kick is good. And the Pittsburgh Steelers upset the Baltimore Ravens. And how about Charlie Batch?
Phenomenal. Coming back after last week's game, winning this football game.
Thank you. That moment that you see right there, me hugging Ben Roethlisberger, that was a moment that was caught on camera. 20 million people saw that. And it was a moment that I'm hugging him and I'm thanking him for everything that he done for me, and he's thanking me for everything that I've done for him. I knew he was coming back the next week, but I knew for me that probably would be the last start that I would ever have in the National Football League, and lo and behold, it turned out to be true. But I remember getting home and my nephew, he comes up to me and he hugs me, Uncle Charlie, great game. And he's 6 years old, and I'm like, great. He said, but why were you crying after you won the game? And I said, why do you cry after you lose a football game? And I'm like, I realize I'm arguing with a 6-year-old. But it's important because people see what we do on a different platform. It trickles all the way down. But it was important for me not just to be remembered for that professional football player, but things that we were doing off of the field. Everything that we do there is important because we're impacting people's lives. We're having children think outside of the box. It's just important because we're pushing these kids beyond their expectations. You all here are here for a purpose. The first step to getting better is showing up. You all are doing that. You all have a chance to make a difference in this community. I serve on the United Way board. I know how important it is to people, but also understand everybody's different in their situations. But the one thing we all have is time. We all have time. You all are here collectively to serve that purpose, but also making a difference in your community. But one of the things that I will leave you with this, it's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's a quote that says, do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. I can't sit up here and tell you what it's going to take for you to become a 15-year NFL veteran. I can't sit up here and tell you what it's going to take to do a lot of the things that you want to accomplish. But for me, when you look at the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 80-plus years, there's only been one player who's born and raised in Pittsburgh to play for the Steelers and to win 2 Super Bowl rings. You all have that opportunity. You all are here. We're all sitting here right now. We're up in Mount Pleasant. You all have that opportunity. When you go out there and become that successful CEO, never forget you didn't do it by yourself. Somebody helped you along the way. We all had the opportunity to learn it through education. We've earned it through labor, and now it's our opportunity to return it back to our communities. I'm doing it in Pittsburgh area. If there's anything that I can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. We can show you some of the things that we did to help smooth out the hurdles. But over 17 years, we have a track record. But it's important because people value their time, and when they show up on a Saturday morning and they support Charlie Batch, it's not because they're supporting Charlie Batch as the professional football player. They're supporting because of the mission and the belief that we have that we're trying to make impact on people's lives. That's what we do. Thank you for the opportunity. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. We expected your best, and you delivered. We thank you very much for your leadership on the field, in your community, setting a great example for young people throughout your state, throughout the region, throughout our country. We thank you very much for your message today. Special thanks, Jay McGuetch. I'm going to use the language, Ronnie, right? Jay McGuetch. To Jerome, thank you very much, and to Isabella Bank for the sponsorship today. To all of our partners and sponsors who have made this possible, and they are listed on the back of your program, we want to thank them very much for making this possible. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to say a big, big, big thank you to the United Way Board for giving me this opportunity, and to my incredible staff. Would you all stand up and be recognized for all the effort in putting this conference together today?